Hello, everyone, and welcome if you're joining us live, listening later, watching later, however you're consuming this. I am Nigel, and you are tuned in to another episode of Casual Conversations with Comic Creators. It's episode 29. We've actually done 29 of these, and yeah, and this is the My Matter show where each month I speak to a different comic creator about their journey and what goes into the craft of making comics. So the whole idea is we're showcasing the human being behind the art as we dive into each person's story and what they're up to. So I'm the My Matter co-founder and comic creator myself, Nigel, and I'm here today talking with Eren Angiolini. Eren, welcome back.
Hey, thank you for having me again. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. Because you were on episode, what was it, episode 6? So you're one of
I-
the
Oh,
the
nice.
early, yeah, the early
I'm a friend of the
victims.
show.
They, yeah, second time caller, long time listener. So yeah, this is like I was saying to someone that it's essentially this show has become my way of catching up with people who I haven't seen in a while. So it's very lazy of me, but also people get to meet different comic creators, so there's some value in that too. So for people who didn't watch episode 6 or don't know of Eren, they are a professional fantasy artist and comic colorist. There's a lot of C's, and worked on a lot of things. So titles include Critical Role, The Mighty Nein Origins, Justice League, DC Pride, and Doctor Who, among other that we may just get into. So yeah, a lot of well-known titles, and it's always cool. I think part of the reason for starting this is getting to know the people behind like the high-profile stuff that you might know, and you are one of those people. So, Eren, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Getting back, still a little bit getting back into the rhythm of things after the summer. I took a couple of weeks to visit my family, and then, of course, like everything piled up. So when I had to,
Yeah,
like,
that's why you
came
can't leave your
back,
desk.
yeah,
Like,
so it was
never leave your desk.
2 weeks. That's too long, and it
What
was
were
the
you
beginning of
thinking?
September. So now I'm finally caught up, and I think it's kind of like October and like fall in general is pretty much a time which a lot of people like start new things, or because during the summer all the people go on holiday, so it's not the
I
best
wouldn't
time to
know such
launch.
things.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
and
know.
holidays? What's that? Freelancers, we don't do holidays. So I think like there's a lot of like projects or like small, things that are moving at the same time. So I finally feel like I have things under control again, and I can proceed more smoothly into the
Hmm.
rest of the year and the next one.
That's interesting. So you're freelance. So in some cases you get to dictate like the way you work, but then is the way you work still dictated by what goes on with like publishers or just like people, fans? Like how does your year typically go?
Yeah, so when it's about comics, it's generally I follow whatever publishers or client I'm working with. Like I follow their schedule. So and that's kind of like one of the tricky things because like if a publisher reaches out and say, "Hi, we have this series, like a 3-issue thing, and for May," and then May comes up and you have to reach out and say, "Hi, are we still doing the thing?" And the publisher's
Oh,
like,
okay.
"Oh no, it's been delayed by I don't know 6 months," and you're like, "Cool," and then maybe 6 months after, maybe it does start or maybe it doesn't start yet, so
Uh,
it's kind of like a little bit of I would say there is a 50-50 split of projects that actually start when they're supposed to, and the other 50% of projects that are either delayed for a bit or put on hold or just like delayed by like a full year and stuff like that. Or the publisher contacts you and says, "Hi, I have this thing that I need done now." Or
yeah,
like
yeah.
the deadline is Friday and it's Tuesday. And so you have to make some space if you have the ability, or you have to say, "Sorry, I can't fit that in my schedule." But so when it comes to comics, it depends very much on the publisher and like what the timelines are.
Mm.
And I have my Patreon, and that's kind of like a monthly recurring thing. So towards the end of the month, between the 20th and the 30th, or at least the end of the month, I know that I have Patreon to take care of. So that's in the schedule, and then I have. If I'm doing commissions like at this time, I'm negotiating with like the various clients and what they're up to, and hopefully I don't have to chase anyone, because that it's also something that eats up time. But yeah, in general, when it's a company or a publisher or some kind of like structured project, there is a deadline that is kind of like imposed by the client themselves. They tell me, oh, I need this by the end of October, or we will start working on this in December. And I block out kind of like that's that time, or I make a note in I have my agenda, my diary, in
Okay.
which like I write everything. I'm a very like physical notes taking person,
Yeah,
so
me
I
too. I
have
feel that.
I have all my little folders, my little things, and I tick off everything as I go through. So like
It's
if in
very old
October,
school.
yeah, it helps me with like remembering things, because I write it down and it's more impressed into, like, even when I was in uni, like writing down notes or like rewriting notes or summaries of what I was studying helps me remember things.
Mm.
So writing it down, I also have kind of like the visual memory of it being on the page. So maybe I have a project in October, so I'll write it on the like the calendar page and say, hey, this thing is happening in October, so I need to be aware that, for example, if I have 2 or 3 things going on already, I will probably not take commissions that month, because then it would just
Pile
pile
up.
up to the
Yeah.
point of it being too much to actually deliver on
Mm.
one or more of the things, because then you end up juggling too much, and then you don't finish any of the things that you're juggling.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you do them, but then you personally are so stretched. It's like you don't either you don't do it
Yeah,
as
you're
well,
too
or you.
stressed, or you're
Yeah.
not happy with the result, or you do it but you're late, and then it goes on to the next month's pile of things. So yeah, it's a mix of things that I schedule myself. It's more like I get to decide like the hours and the times that I spend like every day, or like on the specific project. So for example, I could say on Tuesdays and Wednesdays I work on comics, and the rest of the days of the week I work on like commissions or like my
Mm.
own project, or like on Fridays I work on Patreon or stuff like that. So that's, I guess, more where the freelance you do what you want type of thing comes in, as in like you arrange your days, but if
Mm.
you have a deadline is there anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that. I guess that's quite freeing in a sense, but then it comes with some responsibility. And what's interesting, because so we work with young people, and especially with the comic we're working on, we've had some young people like input on that, and we do things remotely because we're a remote team. And more than once, a few times, like feedback has come back in terms of like being able to have that discipline to section your days and get motivated. Is that something you've always been good at? Did you have to learn how to keep yourself motivated and on track when no one's like over your shoulder, like literally over your shoulder, like, is this done yet?
I think it's something that it came easier to me in general, because I like I think I work well with structure, but it's something that I really learned when I was in university and studying in uni. I studied languages, and so I realized how much it helped me to have kind of like a more structured approach, because of course you have to study completely on your own. It's not like high school or college, like when you have kind of like more homework or like more
Mm,
things assigned. It was kind of like, okay, you have to read these 5 texts, and then you have to make like you have to go through an exam about them. And
yeah.
it's just like, yep, okay, it's all up to me. So like I experimented with like time management techniques and things like that, and that has helped me a lot, I think, in my freelance work afterwards too, and nowadays, to be more cognizant of like I'm wasting my time, or like I'm using my time efficiently, and I'm resting enough, and all those things. It is a skill. It is a very difficult but important skill to learn, and I do have to remind myself of like both the I'm letting myself slip too much
Yeah.
side of things, and also the okay, now I need to remember to keep time for myself, and sleep and rest and be kind to myself, because those are all I think that you have this the skill of learning how to manage your time, and
Mm.
then you're tempted to like hyper manage everything. It's like, I have to be efficient all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so that teaches efficiency, and then you have to learn how to not be efficient in a good way. So like how to
Oh, that's a
just
good
sit
point.
and chill and relax, spend some time with your friends, with your family, with your pets, and outside, touch grass, all
Yeah.
those things. Yeah, we are very familiar with, but we're not very good at sometimes.
No, I'm very much guilty of that. It's like because it's easy to get caught in especially when you work from home. Like I kind of split my time between like mostly working from home, but then there's like a co-working space, and that helps you because it's closer to an office type scenario. So you're like, okay, I need to leave here and go home, so I can close the laptop and do that.
Yeah,
But
that is very helpful.
yeah, it's definitely a skill. So get that. And I know I would have asked this question when you came on last time. I feel like I always ask it, but just for people who haven't seen that or don't know, your role as a colorist. Do you want to explain just briefly like what exactly is a colorist, just for some repetition, and we'll we'll
Of
continue.
course, I mean it's been some time since the other episode, so
Okay.
happy to give a refresher. And I know a lot of people are not familiar with the term colorist, and I mean as a long time like comic fan, even when I was a kid and I would read lots of comics, I also didn't know what a colorist was until
Mm.
you know well in my 20s probably. So a colorist is the person who takes the kind of like black and white comic page, the one that you maybe often see, at Comic Cons or even online. If you Google your favorite comic artist, who's probably a comic penciler or an inker, so the person who draws the page from scratch, either in pencil or in digital. And so the colorist is the person who takes that beautiful, finished page in black and white and makes it colorful. So adds colors and atmospheres and tones and kind of like brings to life the page with colors and there's a few stages to it. So there is a few different styles, there is a few different like techniques. Just like in general with any type of art, there are some colorists who have like a more like flat or stylized approach to colors. There's people like myself who have a more like painterly style, so something that would be more akin of like an illustration or something that is more similar to like a full painting. I'm not saying a photograph, but like that has kind of like more of that brushwork and more three-dimensionality, as opposed to, for example, something that people might be used to as a like an anime or a manga type of coloring that has kind of
Right.
like was called like cell shading, so like with kind of like strong edged shadows that are simplified, or like often in cartoons as well, because that's kind of like a very efficient and quick way of communicating um, emotion or like light sources, atmospheres. So different colorists have different styles and different approaches, but that's what I do. I take black and white pages and I make them look very colorful.
Yeah, no, that's good because I spoke to Ian Richardson maybe 2 episodes ago, quite recently, and he's a inker, so he does
Yes.
the ink. So he'll pass it on to you, and then you'll basically make his work look good. I think that's what you're saying. Is
Yeah, he
that's
he also Ian also like draws his own pages as well, I think. So,
yeah,
but yeah, he
yeah,
does
that's
he
yeah,
does he does pencils and inks traditionally, I think most of the time,
that's
or
cool.
at
So
least
then
yeah.
you like connect like that, and you've worked with
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
Ian as well. So
Yes, I did.
yeah, yeah, and because he was saying like in terms of styles, because from like an outsider perspective, it's like
Hmm.
okay, you've got like the outlines, and then you're coloring that in, and you could almost think like anyone could do that because if you can color in anyone's work, which I guess you can. But then he was saying like styles, like you can match up styles well or better than others. I think he was saying so like your work might fit better with someone else's style of inking.
Yes.
Have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it applies both to like it pencils, inks, and colors, there's like few different stages of that, and I think that is very much true. So there is, so if you have someone who draws very kind of like realistic looking lines, so something that is towards on the scale of like realism or semi-realism, it might be more difficult for someone who has a very flat style to make the images look very three-dimensional. But at the same time, maybe the person who draws the pages, the penciler has maybe a lot of three-dimensionality to their work already. So like maybe they do hatching, which is when you kind of like add like little pen strokes or like pencil strokes and details,
Okay.
kind of like
Yeah.
shadows with
Yeah.
like with the pencil or markers or ink, whatever you're using to draw your pages. And in that case, maybe that same line work will give three-dimensionality to the page, and so maybe a flat style would work well on that because you don't have to add a lot of like rendering and painterly detail on top of it. So it very much depends on like, yes, different styles, and even in like in the same type of style, so like two or three people who do a more flat style might still have different vibes and different techniques in between them. So it might still, even if the approach is similar, the result will still look different. And there's also, of course, a lot of variation in like the type of palettes or like the type of vibe. Like someone might be very good at doing like moody or night scenes, or someone might be very good with horror comics and like helping the pages to convey a sense of like thrill or threat or menace or something with their colors, while someone might have like a more colorful and youthful style and maybe work better for like a young adult comics or something that is more even for an adult readers, but maybe like has kind of like more of a funky, fun feeling to it. So it very much depends on. It's not like with music, everyone. Even when you do a cover, even if you have the same song, it can sound completely
Sound
different
different. Yeah.
depending
Yeah.
on who's playing it.
Do you have a style that you kind of go towards or like find yourself returning to?
I do. I think I'm more prone to like a more like rendering and painterly styles. It's also kind of like how I like to illustrate my own. Like when I do illustrations and things like that, I do like a very kind of like painterly style. But I have done some comics in kind of like more like flat styles, and I do like that as well, like from time to time as a variation. But my main one is probably more of like a more painterly approach.
No, that's cool. And like I mentioned earlier, that you've worked on some, like big properties, and in terms of what you've got like going now, you mentioned before you've got a comic out at the moment, which is The Domain, which is on Image.
Yes.
And is that something that, because I took a look at the page, and you've got like the cover and you've got like the people working on it, and like your name is on there. Is that still a weird feeling for you to like to see like your name like
It's
got
always
put there?
nice. It's always exciting, especially when it's projects like the domain that are like I'm really passionate about. So it's always very cool to see. It's also, I would say, a little bit of a point of contention in the comic space, because depending on what publisher you're working on, depending on like what team you're working on, colorists and letters sometimes are excluded from comic cover crediting. Because a lot of people tend to, like, a lot of publishers tend to prioritize writers
As the writer and the
and
illustrator,
pencilers, because
right?
because they kind of like usually are the big famous names that attract people's attention. And I don't agree with that. I think that colors and lettering contribute heavily to the success of a comic, and to just like the storytelling and the side of it. But I think luckily it's something that is getting less less troubling. So I think more and more publishers are embracing this approach. So it's always nice to see that, especially maybe new publishers that you haven't worked with, or like new, maybe like indie press, or like people who might not be still too familiar with like how to credit people and things like that. So it's always very nice to see your work acknowledged as an essential part of the team. And not just like saying, "Oh, we put just the famous people's names on, on the covers." um,
Yeah, I mean, there's room for more names on there.
yeah, I mean, there's space. It's not like there's not
Yeah,
space.
yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but I feel like it's. I mean, from like my perspective, so yes, someone who makes comics, but specifically someone who works with like younger people who might want to do the kind of thing you're doing. I feel it's always good to highlight all the different roles that are involved in the creative process, so people can know. Okay, cool. This is a role. You can illustrate. You can do the pencils. You can actually color, and they're separate thing. Because then you find you might have a talent for one over the other, and if you don't know, you don't know, right? So
Absolutely, yeah, I very much agree. I think that's I like that approach, and I think it's very important. Definitely.
okay. And what is the domain for people like myself who had never come across it until you mentioned it?
Domain is a very meta story, and meta not in the sense of Facebook,
Quickly,
but
yes, in a classic sense.
in the classic sense of meta. So it's actually a spin-off of another comic. So I'm working in this comic. It's written by Chip Zdarsky, of like Daredevil or Batman. He's done a million things. He definitely is the big name on the cover. And Rachel Stott, who's a longtime friend, and we've worked together on Doctor Who, who's the other big time name on the cover, because
Yeah.
Rachel's also worked on Fantastic Four. She's done lots of amazing work. And Chip is currently, there's an ongoing series that Chip writes and draws that's called Public Domain, and is essentially the story of a comic creator and like the fight of this creator to kind of like keep control and the rights to his own work throughout the production. And it's kind of like like a commentary on the struggles of the comics industry and the lack of control that a lot of creators have when their
Yeah.
projects like become famous and like get produced by Hollywood or other things like that. And so essentially the domain is the comic that the character, the protagonist of
Oh.
the public domain,
Oh,
writes
right.
in
That's interesting.
the main comic series. So it's a comic in a comic.
Cool.
And it's I mean, absolutely readable on its own. Like, it doesn't
Mm,
need any information about the original series, but it essentially is the story of three friends who are very passionate about outer space and the life that there might be among the stars, who do happen to find alien life and have and alien pirates and lots of other stuff like that, and have to deal with that and the consequent acquisition of superpowers that
mm.
they get from this contact, and yeah, and like how that affects their like morals and their everyday life, and it's good fun.
Cool. Oh, I like that meta comic inside a comic. That's cool.
Yes, and it's a 5-issue series, and I think issue 4 should be coming out pretty soon.
All right, I'll make a mental note of that. And because you also, I mean, you've worked like Batman comic and Doctor Who you mentioned, and is it a Critical Role comic
Yes, 2 Critical Role comics
too?
now.
Okay,
Yes.
because I didn't actually know there was a Critical Role comic. And tell us
Yes.
about that. Like how I'm interested to know what a comic is, how that's depicted, but then also how you found yourself to working on, because Critical Role is like massive. So how did you find yourself
Yes.
working on that?
Yeah, so they started doing comics. So they work with Dark Horse, the publisher.
Right.
They have like a partnership, so they publish all of their comics through Dark Horse. And I think they've been doing comics now for, I want to say 4 years, 4 or 5 years. They started doing the Vox Machina Origins series, which essentially, for those who are familiar with Critical Role, campaign one, which is their launch campaign, the first campaign, Vox Machina, started after they had been playing D&D together at home. Well, Pathfinder actually at the time, at home for a few years. and then they started streaming it on Twitch and YouTube. And so the comic started as a way for them to tell what the stories that happened before live streaming. So it like starts with the very beginning of the characters that were brought to life in their friend's kitchen, and then so that was kind of like a way to catch up with the characters before we get to meet them in the live streams. And then they expanded on that, and so I worked on two of their graphic novels. I've worked on the Mighty Nein Origins, Not the Brave, and the Mighty Nein Origins, Caduceus Clay, which so whilst the Vox Machina ones are kind of like a series ongoing that tells you the story of the characters and their adventures, the Mighty Nein Origins are kind of like the prequels, and they're like standalone issues, like graphic novels, about 40 pages each, on the origin story of said characters, like how like maybe they came into their power, or like how their backstory that you or maybe a specific part of that backstory from that you have heard of in the live
In the
stream
show.
campaigns,
Yeah. Right.
but you didn't get to see that part because they would be a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what they've done for that. And then they're also doing kind of like spin-offs and like similar things about other characters and like factions. And so there is one about the Bright Queen. There is one of the like semi-divine beings in the world of Exandria, which is where Critical Role takes place. And so they're expanding quite a bit into comics. And how I got to work with them is that I was already a huge fan, and so trying to remember years is always difficult going backwards.
Yeah. Who knows what time is anymore? Anyway.
Yeah, time is absolutely out of my reach. I think it must have been 2021. So this year, Caduceus came out in 2024. 23. So probably in 2022, at the beginning of the year, like there was a thing on Twitter going around about like manifesting your goals for the year.
Oh yeah.
And I had tagged Dark Horse Comics saying, "Hey, Dark Horse Comics, like let's make this the year that you hire me to do a Critical Role comic, to color a Critical Role comic." A lot of my followers and friends who are big Critical Role fans had liked it and like retweeted it. And through a good friend, Diana Souza, who is one of the main colorists for the other Critical Role series, I messaged her and I said, "Hey, would you mind sharing the contact to you of the editor you work with at Dark Horse, so that I can like just say, hey, I'd like to work with you as well." And Diana was lovely, and she gave me, she put me in contact with the editor, and I reached out. And the first time, this is good for everyone who's an aspiring comic artist or colorist or whatever part of the comic creation process you want to do. I reached out to the editor and say, "Hi, I'm a DC colorist. I worked in Justice League and worked in like Doctor Who and things like that. I'd like to work on Critical Role. I'm a huge fan. This is my work. Let me know if you're interested in working together at some point." And I didn't get any replies the first time because editors are busy. So if you don't hear back, or you have you get like a rejection, that's perfectly fine. I still get rejections for like projects and things and stuff like that. It's a perfectly normal part of the job. I know it's always upsetting, it's always disheartening a little bit, but don't get discouraged and just try again. And so that's what I did. I tweeted that tweet about wanting to work with Dark Horse. It got some traction, and I think it had been 3 or 4 months since I have written to that editor the first time, which is a good thing. Like 3 or 4 months is like a good time to maybe check back in again. And so I waited about a week after that tweet had been circulating, and I had seen that the editor themselves had liked the tweet. And so after a week, I reached out and said, "Hey, it's me. Can we I'd like to work with you guys at some point." And they replied that they liked my work and they absolutely would keep me in mind for any future projects. And I think a couple of weeks after they reached out because the colorist that was meant to color the first comic that I did with then the Not the Brave comic, the colorist had to quit the project because they weren't able to work on it anymore. And so the editor reached out and said, "Hey, this thing just opened up. Would you like to do it?" And I said yes. So that's how I started working with them. And so yeah, I did the Not the Brave comic was the first one, came out last year, and the Caduceus Clay came out just, I was about to say just a couple months ago, but it's not a couple months ago anymore. It was in springtime. So
Yeah, no,
it's not July anymore. So
yes,
it's
it's very
probably not.
dark
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So
It really is.
ah, that is very cool. Like I'm kind of that's a really cool story, and I'm glad you started with manifesting, and then because I always get the impression that because I see people do it, and like we talked about it, like even like myself and Tazzy, and I always get the impression people see it as like I'll just wish this thing will happen, and then I'll sit here, and then
You
I'll
have
just
to
wait for it.
act. You
You
have to act.
and that's what you did. So you actually you went and did something, and it kind of it's a mindset thing, right? It's like, okay, I want this thing to happen, but then also I'm gonna go and act as if it's already happened, or if it's going to happen, and I'm gonna do those things. And that's kind of what you did, because you know there's one thing to say like, oh, I want to work on this like major property that I'm a fan of, but then you go, hey, Dark Horse, like I'm here. But then
Yeah.
also when you don't get the thing immediately, and that's the other part. It's like, oh, I'll just think of this thing and it'll come to me immediately. But you wait, was it three? You said 3-4 months.
Yeah, for like checking back in with the editor, because you don't want
Yeah,
to harass your editor.
that's the thing. It's a balance, right? You want to
Yeah,
like nudge but not annoy.
yeah, because it's always the thing about, the editors are very busy people in general,
Mm,
and there might be million ways and reasons why they haven't reached out. They might be busy. Your email went to spam. They are just not looking for new talent at the moment, and maybe they don't have time to reply. So it very much depends. I think it's always a balance of yeah, acting, but also like being respectful and
yeah,
understanding boundaries and things like that. But yeah, you can manifest, like manifesting and telling the universe
yes,
that this is what I want to do. It's great, but it's the first step. Then you have to show the universe that you
mm.
are committed to the thing that you want to
Yeah,
do.
yeah. No, that's the thing. And for a lot of like these kind of things, also it's a surprise that because there's also the assumption that once I mean, you've done like you say DC and Batman. Once you've done that, like you can just go anywhere and say, I don't know, wave the comic around and say like, hire me. This is what I've done. Like, yeah, no more questions. But I guess even you still have to like, yeah, get rejections, get non-replies. So there's that aspect to it. But then yeah, just the acting like, okay, I can, this thing is possible, I'm gonna go and like act as if it is actually possible. I think that's a good lesson. I mean, even like this year, because we were talking before we went live about, you mentioned like being present, and just this year I've just been trying to keep that in mind. How I've not always been great at it, so it's definitely a work in progress. But how do you make the most of where you are like right now, and what do you do for that, and realizing that even if you don't get something right now, that person you send the email to, they saw it. It just now is not the right time, but they saw it and it's in their mind. So then later on, okay, cool. Now I've got you in mind. This opportunity comes up, and now you're ready for it. So I think that's a really good story.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to a friend recently about the difference between like saying that you've been lucky and saying you've been fortunate, and I really like that. And like, there's kind of like idea. I truly believe that like luck or fortune has a big role into like freelancing and being able to do this successfully. But what I like, and what this friend was saying as well, is that like you can be lucky, but then it kind of like luck is kind of like a thing that happens, and then poof, it disappears into the air.
Mm,
But you need to make that work for you. So like you can't be absolutely in the right place at the right moment, and that is something that sometimes will fall on your lap. You have this occasion that you might never have, or like someone else might not have, but then you have to act upon it. So like if you take the thing that just happened once and don't put in the work, you don't like
mm,
show up, you don't do what you're supposed to do and more, then that's probably going to be just a once in a life thing. probably not going to come back.
Mm.
And so that's the difference between, like, I do think that, you have to, you can manifest, you can be, you can have a strike of luck, but then you have to, uh, you just have to be present, and you have to be conscious of that. You need to do the work, because otherwise the work is not going to do itself for you.
Yeah, no, I get that. And just as I continue, just to say thank you to 86 Floor, who just raided our Twitch chat. So thank you everyone
Yay!
watching. So yeah, we're here speaking with Eren Angiolini, who is a colorist, and actually we're going to talk about some of the tabletop stuff as well. But yeah, so we're just talking about manifesting. I'm gonna did I manifest that? I don't know. But yeah, no, that's really, yeah, that's really interesting. I'm just thinking, like, because there's certain things that even if it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before, it might have been yesterday, I was having a conversation about, was like, we do workshops, and I'm trying to work out how to expand the workshops and take kind of what you were saying, like not random, we haven't done random workshops, we've done a lot of workshops, but turn it into more of a predictable thing, because it's been a little ad hoc, a little too ad hoc for my liking. So how do you turn that fortunate because I met because I met this person here and they introduced me to that? That's good. That's fortunate. But how do you turn that into a more regular thing? So yeah, no, that's a really good outlook. I like that approach, and especially for something like because you said that you're a fan of Critical Role, and I've seen from like your social media posts you're so big on tabletop RPGs. Actually, so next month we're doing a My Matter next month or the end of this month, sometime in the future. We're doing a My Matter D&D. I think we're going to live stream this. So this
Oh,
is
nice.
yeah, Tazzie's gonna lead this. So I've not played D&D before, so it's gonna be,
Ooh,
yeah,
exciting.
equally. Do you have any recommendations? I don't know if this counts as cheating. I don't know if you can cheat, but
Oh
just
no,
yeah.
it's not.
Okay.
Well,
How do I
I might
win?
be.
Basically, that's why I'm. That's why. How do I
I
win?
I would say you win D&D by not trying to win D&D.
Okay, all right. That's the first
I would say
mistake.
you win D&D when you have fun with your group, with your party. Like, I think that's the
Cool.
most, when you enjoy, and you're a comic creator. You know what,
Mm.
like, telling stories is about, and it's D&D is the same. It's just a different medium, but you are there to tell the story with your friends, with your fellow players, with with Tazzy and like whoever's playing with you. That's the goal. Like, when you're having fun telling stories together, you have won D&D.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I always feel because it's come up before, and we've done like it wasn't a D&D. We did I forgot what it was called. It was a sort of tabletop type
Mm-hmm.
storytelling thing, but it
Blaze
wasn't.
in the dark,
It was
maybe.
no, it's a
Oh.
I don't know. It's like a tiny Tina.
Ah, yes, yes.
There's a
I think
word that I'm
I
forgetting. But is
understand
that,
it.
yeah?
Yeah,
Okay, well you get it.
yeah.
No one else might, but you get it. That's that's the important thing. So we did that. What was that last year? And that was cool, and it made me wonder why I hadn't done that before. Because, like you say, it is like storytelling, and
Mm.
that's what we do. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I guess that inspires a lot of your work. I get the impression, like in terms of, I mean, maybe not the commission or the publisher stuff, because obviously you got to do
Mm.
what the brief is, but you mentioned like your Patreon and things like that. Does that influence like the work you do outside of what you need to do for a publisher?
Yeah, absolutely. My Patreon is 100% geared towards TTRPG stuff. It's called the Adventuring Guild, and essentially I create character portraits that people can use while playing D&D. So either for like with their friends in private, or like if they're doing like live streams on Twitch and things like that. So in the Art Adventuring Guild, every month with the patrons, they get to choose a theme. So like this today, because it's the first of the month, it's when the new rewards for Patreon launch. The theme for this month is champions. Oh, Gina is here. Gina is an amazing player. So absolutely incredible, absolutely stunning storyteller and AP performer, actual play performer, for those who are not too much into the TTRPG space. And is also an award-winning player. So Gina is
Oh,
incredible.
cool.
And so yeah, so when I do on my Patreon, every month the patrons get to vote for a theme, and this month's theme is champions. The month before was like Shadowlands, so like kind of like
Mm.
dark and moody characters. We've had like divine beings. We have like like a magic school theme, or like even elves or dwarves. And every month, people get to suggest character ideas, and I choose 10 and I bring them to life. So that's my Patreon is 100% TTRPG based. Most of my commissions, I would say 99.9%, my commissions are someone's D&D character or like an equivalent like Pathfinder or like a similar like TTRPG, another tabletop system. And so it's outside of comic work. Basically, all my character design or illustration work is towards TTRPGs. Last year, I also released a little homebrew thing. So I wrote some classes for D&D and a whole like species for it. Not official D&D, my own thing, not official D&D, but maybe one day. And I've also produced a deck that I actually have it here, if I can grab it without destroying the rest of my setup and not dragging my computer with me. Yeah, I made it. I did this. So this is the Arcane Compendium, and it's a collection of cards. It's a deck of cards and of system agnostic characters, which means that their characters are not tied to a specific rule set, so not necessarily D&D, but can be played in any fantasy rules game or setting. And so there's this box is full of just lots and lots and lots of different characters, and they're a bit shiny because they have sleeves. And at the back you have kind of like plot hooks, so maybe they people can use them as a way to include them in their adventures, or to create a new character when maybe they're not too inspired, or maybe they're new and they feel a bit lost trying to come up with a completely new thing. Anyway, that's what I do when I'm not coloring comics. I draw lots of TTRPG characters. I draw commissions, and I play D&D with my friends. One of whom is in the chat right now. Hi, Zeno.
So you like did the characters, the story around them, and then you actually got it physically made.
Yes,
So
I produced it through a crowdfunding campaign.
Okay. So, and how many of those are there out in?
So at the moment, so there were about, in total, there was about around 400-ish backers in the campaign that have received the rewards. Hopefully, everything should have arrived at this stage. It was fulfilled in July and August. And I have a few remaining copies, and I will be bringing some to the cons that I'm doing in the next couple of months before the end of the year. So I have about 150. I would like to do more with it in the future, but we'll see. It's kind of like a longer term project at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's I always had well, not always, maybe for a few years, I had this idea to do some kind of card-based game with some of our characters. I do not have a fully fleshed idea out yet, but there's something out there manifesting. We're gonna
manifesting. Yeah, this was kind of like my
future.
big item for like big to-do thing for last year and this year was making, because the crowdfunding happened last summer, and the delivery was scheduled, and luckily I was able to do it for this year. And this is all me, 100%, like illustrated, written, and designed. I've done the campaign. I've done the fulfillment. It was a lot of work. So it's basically, it took not a full year of work, because a lot of it, of course, was like waiting for things to be, produced and stuff like that. But throughout the last year, it has been, a big constant task to work on. Yeah. But I'm very proud of the result.
No, you should be, because we've got a Kickstarter at the moment, which is behind. We are working on it. We've got the artwork in process. So I know how difficult it is to get something like done, and then once it's done, actually get it out. So
yes, I would say if I was to do it again, this is. I mean, I must say I had a fantastic cultural consultant, James Mendes, who's absolutely outstanding professional, has worked on a million incredible titles, and then I had Marcy working as my editor, and they were essentially like the only other two people that I like worked on constantly on the deck, because of course editing, like making sure there's like everything is of course English is not my main, it's not my mother tongue, so making sure that the 22,000 words that I wrote for this were made sense. I'll just say hi, Gina. Thank you very much for stopping, and go check out Gina and Blackwater D&D and their amazing campaigns, and because they're incredible. Speaking of TTRPG stuff that you shouldn't miss out on, and so that was big chunk of work. But yeah, everything else was me, and I would say if I would do it again, I would probably have as close to everything ready as possible when launching the Kickstarter, because
Yeah.
I had nearly all the art done, and I had probably like a third, not less than a third, probably a fifth of the writing done when the campaign happened. And I was told by the people that I was consulting with, because I launched it on BackerKit, and the BackerKit person that I
Right.
was working with at the time told me, oh no, you don't worry about it, you don't have to have everything ready, you can launch the thing and just finish, just make sure that you account for all the time you need and you put extra time on that. And yeah, and I would not follow that suggestion again. I would rather
Yeah.
have as close to everything ready as possible, so if not 100%, at least 90% of everything done.
I get that. I get that. Yeah, because I've been thinking the same for our comics as well. Because the thing that kind of tripped me up is it was really a Kickstarter. It was like we need to get like to this amount to say, okay, cool, we can make the whole thing. So we didn't, or I didn't really start until we got that. And then once you get into the writing process, it's like it's it can you think you've got this idea, it evolves, and then you get people's input, and then write, rewrite. So I think going forward, it's like it'll be good to have at least like the script and as much of the artwork as you can, and then it's just ready, and it's a smoother
Yeah,
transition.
it can be difficult, of course, when you're working on a team and you need funds to pay your
Yeah,
teammates, because it's not
yeah,
very nice to say, "Oh, I'll pay you if if we
yeah.
fund." But luckily, like I knew that I could cover like the cost of like the cultural consultant and the
Mm,
editing, and I made sure that that if we funded, that would cover production
sure.
costs. But it is an expensive thing to do.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very
yeah.
expensive.
Anything custom
So,
like that. Once you show me the box and everything, it's like, yeah, that is.
yeah, especially it's good paper, it's good because it's good production, and paying for samples and paying for things to be as you want them to be, and kind of price
Mm, okay.
very easily goes up. But yeah, very very proud of it.
So we're almost out of time. And what I usually do at this point is we do like our quick fire round. The
Hmm.
problem is you have been here before, so I had to think of something else to do. But I've got some other questions for you.
Yes.
So for people who don't know, so I usually do this quick fire or quick-ish fire where I ask people about how storytelling maps up onto real life. So when I asked you the first questions before, actually I went back and just did a quick
Hmm.
thing. So because you described yourself as a super motivational, inspirational character, protective of their friends. When I asked you about forces of antagonism, you mentioned imposter syndrome that comes up a lot, overcommitment as well, not having time, energy
Hmm.
to do as much. And so trying to get that balance. You talked about supporting characters because it's always supporting characters on the journey. So you talked about like family, husband as well, friends, tabletop community, RPG community on Patreon as well. And then success for you was becoming a recognized name at conventions, having the flexibility to take breaks as well. So you answered the question. So I can't answer those questions. So I have another
Hmm.
set of questions to wrap up for our quick fire. So I'm gonna give you the next stage of the questions, which I just made up like yesterday. Um, so it's along the same theme. So given that we've got your character, we've got your journey a little bit. I wanted to talk about like world building and character arcs, which are key to any good story. So my first of the quick-ish fire round questions is how would you describe the world that you're in, your creative world, colorist world? or even the tabletop RPG world, how would you describe the world, and what surprises you about, or what has surprised you about it, like now versus when you started?
I think something that I found that it's really interesting how the community that I'm very much part of kind of like it's a Venn diagram of a lot of things that I really like. So kind of like artists and TTRPG and like the queer community, like there's a big group of people that I found online, and like we all kind of like love the same things, and it's been incredibly welcoming. And I really like in TTRPGs as well, but also in comics and in professional comics and professional TTRPGs, there's a lot of very good people who are willing to help and like share their knowledge and share their contributions and like help other people get to where they want, and be it like younger people or the older people, people who are new to the hobby or to the passion or to the industry. And it's something that I'm very grateful for. And it's something, one of the things that I would definitely, that I try to uphold in my own, like my own work, and how I approach this. And I try and share information and like contribute, because I know how scary it might be to be on the outside, or like taking the very few steps
Yeah.
in these worlds, all of them, being an artist professionally or even just for passion. And like we're bombarded with like lots of beautiful images and professional this and professional that, and like society putting a pressure, finances and things like
Mm.
that. Everything costs £1 million
Yeah.
now, and it can be very scary to approach these industries or these passions at any level. So I found that it's very, very rewarding how very welcoming and open many of these spaces are, and how just by like asking nicely and just being present and kind to each other, a lot of these communities grow beautifully. And it's something that I really admire and that I try to always keep in mind in my own work.
Oh, I like that. Okay. And on this journey, everyone likes a good plot twist. So, what would you say has been the biggest plot twist of your creative career so far, and has it changed the direction you go in?
I would say the biggest plot twist of my career is my career. So
The
like
whole journey, though.
for folks who are not might not know me, I did not plan to do this for a living. I was studying languages. I have a bachelor's degree in Japanese language and culture. I thought I was going to be a Japanese to Italian or Japanese to English translator and work on video games and translate video games and comics. And I studied languages throughout my entire academic career. I always had art as a passion, but never thought it was going to be my job. And then I started coloring comics for a hobby, and then I had a chance to do it for work, and I started, and I never stopped. And actually, doing comics professionally is what led me to being an artist professionally in general, like all around, because working on comics allowed me like the stability to become like a freelancer and do that. And then I expanded into doing more like commission work, which I was doing already, but very kind of like occasionally. And yeah, so I would say the biggest plot twist is that I'm here doing this at the moment.
Fair enough. Okay, that works. That works. That's interesting. And along sort of similar lines, I'm always interested in like things that don't go well, like conflicts. When a story, like a good story, is about like
Mhm.
conflict. How has like conflict shaped your journey, and you as an artist, as a character in a story? What have you learned from the difficult moments?
That's a very good question. I think I've learned two things that might seem counterintuitive. Like I've
Mm,
learned to be kind of like very strict, and I've learned to be very kind at the same time.
okay.
So I've learned to be, hardships, like we were saying, before, rejection, or keeping track of what you're doing, being on time, deadlines,
Mm,
stress, all that stuff. So I've had to learn how to manage all of that, and how to be efficient, how to be productive, how to, be reliable, which are all very, very important, not only for yourself and like being able to to fulfill your motivational goals at the beginning of the year, and say, I want to work with this and that, or like I want to do a crowdfunding, or I want to do this thing. And to do that, you have to be consistent, you have to
yeah,
be
yeah.
do present, and that you have to show up and do the job. But also at the same time, I have learned how to not do that. It's something we were chatting about before we started recording. At some point, you have to, pushing as hard as possible is helpful, can be helpful, especially when you're starting to kickstart your career and, get your name out there and all of that. But your body and your brain and your emotions need to be listened to and need to be respected, and you have to understand. And that's a difficult, very difficult skill to learn, how to say no to yourself or to others, and not feel like you're wasting an occasion, that, oh, if I don't do this now, no one else is going to hire me. And learn how much you're worth. So, like, when it comes to rates, and when it comes to scheduling, and like being able to say, I can't do it in 3 days, I have to have this amount of time, I have to have this amount of money because I'm worth it. And also then just making sure that you make time to, do your things that you like doing, have a nice bath, go for a walk, play with your pets, play video games, read books, watch movies, and do all of those relaxing and also creative things that will recharge your batteries. And not only will they make your work better, because if you're exposing yourself to creative and stimulating and interesting things, your brain will be full of ideas, and also you will feel rewarded, but also you will feel rested and you will feel at peace, hopefully as
Yeah.
much as possible. But you need to be, so yeah, I've learned to be strict and effective and productive, and I'm still learning, because that's the more difficult part for me, to be kind and nice to myself, and just let myself enjoy things, taking weekends off. I don't work in the evenings and stuff like that, but it is something that, especially at the beginning, I definitely put aside. I was younger. I'm not that young anymore. But in general, it comes with being more confident and more like when you. I think that's what, like, professionalism is also like, making sure that you find the time to work and do the work, but also then allowing yourself time to breathe and rest and reward yourself for having done the work.
Yeah, yeah. No, I need to. Yeah, I'm gonna replay this bit afterwards, because I need to. There's a lot I need to
Nigel,
learn in
listen
that.
to
Yeah,
me. Listen to me.
yeah. It takes a
Rest.
long time for like lessons to get
Oh yeah.
in my through my skull.
It's
But
rough. It's rough, buddy. It's not just you. It's a struggle. We all go through it.
and last question is, if there's any part of your story you'd rewrite, what would it be?
Ooh, part of my story I would rewrite. I don't know if I would rewrite some things, because I mean, I would not rewrite my university degree, because I think that has, even if it's, I could say, oh, I could have done this earlier, or I could have done like a different type of school or something like that. But I think that many of the steps that I've been through helped me get to where I am, and I'm very happy with this. I would say probably I would be nicer to myself in a lot of times, or like I would reassure myself, saying like, oh, it's as you were saying, imposter syndrome still there. It's not gone away. And so I think that definitely, like, I don't know, be the presence on my shoulder and saying, I know it's tough, I know it's difficult, but you just, it's gonna pay off, and just keep at it. And I think I would just probably, yeah, be kind to myself and like encourage myself, and not waste as much time in worrying about doing things,
Yeah,
and
that's a
like
good one.
feeling that I'm not good enough at doing the
Yeah.
things, and just saying, just do the thing. Maybe I would get
Mm,
it at the same, at the same time. I wouldn't like speed things up, but I would try to make myself feel less
mm.
frustrated or annoyed at myself along the way.
Yeah. Totally get that. Yeah, that's a good answer. And yeah, that is the end of the interview. I had to come up with a new quickish fire
Those are very
round.
good questions.
Cool. All right, I try. But yeah, Aaron, thank you for joining me for a second time on this casual conversations with comic creators.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, always appreciate. I'm sure I said this before, but basically our model here is we have you on once and then we just drag you on. We find ways to drag you on again.
Anytime, anytime.
Cool. But no, appreciate it. And I forgot about the video games thing. At some point we'll have to talk video games, but not tonight because that's the end of the show. So thank you, thank you for joining us. Thank you everyone for listening, watching live, or if you're watching later. Thank you to 86th Floor for the raid. So yeah, we do this every month. We do a bunch of different shows for Maya Mada. We've got a games night coming on Thursday as we live stream this week. But yeah, so casual conversations we do usually on the first Tuesday of each month, but schedule can shift. So follow us on Twitch. If you've not got bored of my voice yet, we also do a podcast. So we do the Story X Story podcast where Tazia and I talk about stories across pop culture. We do deep dives. We just did Borderlands. If you want an entertaining episode, go listen to that. We've got some other things we talk about, live action, animation, anime, video games as well. And we also make comics, so the characters you see on the overlay are from our comics. Before we go, I'll just say another quick shout out and thank you to Pro Gamers Group, who have supplied us with equipment that we use for our live streams. So lighting, I'm being lit up by Streamplify lightings, and the chair here, we got this Nigel Concepts chair. That's very cool. I think I like that.
I never have control over it. It just happens when I do stupid hand gestures.
All right, it was well timed. So yeah, thank you for the support. So we use their equipment for our workshops. We did a bunch of podcasting workshops over the summer with young people. So we used the microphones that I'm also using. It's out of shot, can't see it, but we've got our Mic Pro as well. Yeah, appreciate the support because it just makes the stuff we do a lot better, and we get to introduce new aspiring content creators and people interested into that to the tools that they can use, and I get to learn as well because this is all a learning journey for me. So thank you to Pro Gamers Group, and once again, thank you to everyone for watching. This has been another episode of Casual Conversations with Comic Creators, and we will see you again next time. So take care, everyone.
Bye bye.